Hello, welcome to the webinar. My name is Szymon Urbanowicz, and the topic for today is ITIL4 Best ITSM Practice for the Age of Agility. Now, this is a recording which is a follow-up of the live session which took place on 8th of April 2020. But due to some technical difficulties, we were perfectly unable to use the original recording. So for your pleasure, entertainment, and your information, we are re-recording the session. In the original session, it was led by two presenters, myself, Szymon Urbanowicz, as a moderator and the representative of the practical application of ITIL4, and actually Anad, actually the representative of Axelos, one of the creators of ITIL4, which and his purpose was to present the concepts of new ITIL version. For the pleasure of this recording, we will maintain the agenda. We'll be talking about reasons behind the update from version 3 to version 4, and we'll be using the original Akshay Anad material for it, although I will be the one doing recording. We will familiarize ourselves with some concepts from ITIL version 4, which are extremely useful for the agility. We will talk about the main differences between ITIL3 and ITIL4 approach, and we will talk about some good practices from the field. This is originally my input to the our webinar. I will try to highlight some of the questions asked during the original live session at the end. Altogether, it should not take much of your time, but it's extremely informative and useful, I hope. Now, before we proceed with anything else, I would like to highlight a very important thing, because this event, this webinar, is a conjunction of three magnificent organizations from the creators of ITIL as a concept of service management. You have actually Anad. Axelos is a well-known organization developing and perfecting ITIL concepts, which are so useful and helpful in an IT services business. Now, from the host perspective, we also had a great support from PeopleCert. You should know PeopleCert. PeopleCert is a company providing and selling the examinations from ITIL4 and multiple different certificable products which you can use. And most importantly, this is hosted and this is provided to you by Mindstream, knowledge and development company, which is focused on delivering you the training, the knowledge, the skills, the certificable skills in terms of ITIL, among many others. So from the conjunction of those three wonderful organizations, with Mindstream at the helm, we had this agenda for you, and we had this material. So with no further ado, let me dive deep into our content, and let's start from the reasons behind the update, from some basic concepts related to ITIL4 in the form originally presented by Axelos, and from the wonderful mind of Akshay Anad, where I will be just a narrator and try to keep up with his energy and his enthusiasm in the matter. So let's dive right into it. Why did ITIL needed an update? That's a very important question to ask, and that's something we highlight in this webinar especially. Now, for many years, I was the first person to say that ITIL version 3, especially after 2011 update, is not something that require a modernization, a new version. I was under impression that this is actually an excellent a set of best practices which will be applicable and usable throughout the foreseeing history. Now, obviously, one thing I failed to notice or one thing I failed to envision properly was obviously the origin of agile approach to management. Agile revolutionized the way we think about project management, but it also affects the way we are talking about services. This traditional pyramid structure, which so many companies are fond of, is questioned as we speak, is questioned right now, is actually under a challenge, and there are better ways of managing, and they are all associated with agile environment. So it became obvious some years ago that some updates, some additional information from ITIL, some change of approach is actually expected. Now, the practical symptoms of bad situation noticed by Axilos, you see actually right here on this slide. Axilos was complaining especially about the watermelon SLA effect, which actually grew in last decade or so. A watermelon effect SLA is a situation where SLA signed with the client, a service level agreement signed with the client, is only representing a side of service provider. And definitely a complicated framework of ITIL version 3, a pretty solid framework was allowing that to happen. This practice was actually troubling for the customer, and this concept of value for customer was outside of the scope of typical service providers. So the watermelon effect, where the stats are green on the outside, but the conditions of the client or the behavior or the attitude of the client is actually red, is actually colored with disappointment, was actually common issue. Now, repeatability, which was a very important part of ITIL version 3, resulted in join the dots implementation, resulted in repeating the same approach, the same framework for multiple different endeavors, for multiple different projects, for example, or multiple different services. Join the dots implementation was not a successful approach. So in order to modify it, in order to be in the moment, more flexible and more agile approach had to be considered. Now, the process-oriented approach of ITIL version 3 resulted also in something called single silver bullet mindset, which is suggesting that in one environment, one organization, there may be perceived a one way of doing things. This silver bullet solution, which is used on for almost any situation. I think it's Albert Einstein who said that if the only available tool is a hammer, then everything around you looks like a nail, and this is exactly the issue. The best practices set of for the organization must be flexible, must be usable, but there's no silver bullet solution. There's no solution perfect and eligible for everything. Also, the role of maturity as perceived in traditional managerial approach is also something which was concerning Axilos, and suggested to them that something must be altered or modified. Maturity grows as a as an important element of organization pedigree, but it may be perceived in different ways when you look at things from the agility standpoint. So what has not changed is the fact that ITIL still remains, and it will remain for many years, widely adopted approach to infrastructure approach to infrastructure management. It's valued by a wide area of professionals. It's difficult to work in IT services environment these days and do not know about ITIL. Not even, you may not be aware of consciously of ITIL as an IT infrastructure library, but you're definitely aware of ITIL concepts like incident management, problem management, change management, like portfolio management or catalog management. Those are the things introduced to our environment by ITIL, and we know about them. So in a way, ITIL version 4 builds on this trust, builds on this proficiency, and builds on this experience, which is a standard part of it. Yes. The challenges at the bottom, at the foundation of this change to version 4 were related in much aspect into to the size and complexity of our IT infrastructure library of ITIL. Adapt and adopt and continual improvement as a concept serves it well, but the necessity of explaining them, their counterintuitive nature, made them less known concept, made them less adopted concepts, and made them, there was a necessity to reinforce them. And also the applicability was dependent on ability of people in the organization to learn ITIL quickly. And since foundation training of ITIL took 3 days, it was also sometimes a challenge for the organization to find the time, to find the resources to actually train all the people properly. And some compromises were observed in the organization where compromises should not be observed. So those were all challenges for the lead team behind the architecture of the concept, which is utilizing the practitioners from the field. There's a subject matter experts, SMEs, a group which is helping a lot with defining some things. I mean, this all leads us to the conclusion that as far as ITIL is concerned, you can expect that these are not only a theoretical or high-level abstract solutions. They're actually generalizations of real experiences of people from the field. And ITIL4 has in its foundation the most important experience for the agility age, which is experiencing the impact of agile project management onto pretty static and pretty repeatable environment of IT services. So this is a very important thing. The aim of creators of ITIL4 was to apply those design principles into the concept. It's supposed to be modular, so you can learn it in complete pieces, in elements, in self-serving elements, which are agile, which are, you know, like sprints actually to some extent. The flexibility, the application of Lean principles supposed to be a part of it as well. Practicality was always a very important part of ITIL, and this is the design principle which is not less important in version 4. But it's also supposed to be evolutionary. It's supposed to be a next chapter of an existing book and not a brand new beginning, which is also there. It's supposed to work on the things it already created, and it's also supposed to be collaborative. It's supposed to enhance the collaboration in comparison to typical cooperation. A collaboration experience is an experience of common goal, is an experience of building something together, rather than just focusing on achieving your own personal goals with the help of somebody else. So So obviously, all those things were at the basis of ITIL, and they were actually brought into conclusion in a magnificent form. Success factors for the updates were, as you see, related to providing the fundamental concept, and that was achieved through fantastic foundation level training, which takes 2 days now, and is actually pretty extensive. Well, it explains concepts perfectly without wasting a time on overgrown theory. The understanding for practitioners is absolutely there. It's very easy to enthuse people with ITIL and to be an evangelist for ITIL concepts. Ensure the flexibility and adaptability. As I mentioned, this is a very important thing, and obviously a concept which is not necessarily new to ITIL, but its importance has been updated, and that's people and culture. In the version 3 of ITIL, though they existed as concepts, they were never a shaping and the shape agent of the organization. Now we have 2020, we have an age of agility, we have an age of adaptability, and people and culture affect organizations to much more extent than ITIL3 was able to predict. Now ITIL4 definitely makes it an accent, definitely makes it a highlight, so it's very important. So key concept you may expect to learn when you get on your way, when you get on your journey and learn ITIL4. Some of them stay the same, and they are your well-known friends if you are familiar with ITIL version 3. Some of them are kind of a new ones. The ITIL purpose remains the same. It shapes this, it connects organization that is willing to provide services. The specific solutions like specific frameworks for the organization speciality remain the same, and they are fully compatible with ITIL approach. And products and services are still in the center of our attention, and the products and services excellence is what we want to achieve. There's a small difference in the way we approach to concept of value in ITIL version 4, and this is something which may especially be important for those of you who consider themselves practitioners. Now, if you remember, in ITIL version 3 and version 2 and version 1, we define a service as a mean of delivering value, as a mean of providing value to our clients, and the satisfactions of clients is the other side of the equation. This has changed. This has changed due to Agile world. Now, value is perceived as, and we actually had it mentioned a slide before with this nice graphic here, and now value is something which is co-created between service provider and a service receiver, a client or a sponsor or a user, which are generically called consumers. So value is co-created. What does it mean? It means that ITIL acknowledges the audience, acknowledges that the client is not only a cooperator, a purchaser, a buyer of some goods or services. Now, the client is also, in part, an author, a creator, because you cannot create a suitable, adaptable service or product without taking into consideration early, mid, or late feedback from the people who are actually using it, paying for it, or setting requirements for what it's supposed to be. So the definition of value changed a bit. It's still provided to consumers. It's still provided with in conjunction with suppliers. There are still regulatory authorities which are taken in consideration, but the value is now co-created in an activity called service relationship. Now, this is a nuance, but this is an important nuance showing you the direction the changes actually take place. What you see here should be considered as a new concept, though to some extent familiar for those of you who are practitioners. This is 4 dimensions of service management. It is an evolution of an old concept which used to be called 4 P's of service design, which were people, partners, products, and in this version, it actually evolved. Instead of people, we have organizations and people. Instead of products, we have information technology. Instead of partners, we have partners and suppliers. And instead of processes, we have value streams and processes. Now, this is not only an evolution of an old concept, this is also a highlight of how organization is located into the environment around it. So those 4 areas are the decision areas of the organization, and those factors outside show the influence of the environment onto organization. And when organization reacts in those 4 dimensions properly to the external influence, then the products and services which this organization creates can enable value co-creation with consumers. So this is the concept. In the middle of 4 dimensions, there's a space for the service value system, which shows the elements of the organization in conjunction, collaborating to achieve value co-creation. There are guiding principles provided by the ITIL. There's governance, which is this summation of the methods the organization is managed by. There are practices, a fairly new concept in ITIL, which we'll mention in a moment, and continual improvement as a spirit, as a pledge of the organization to improve with every value co-creation turn or iteration. And in the middle, a service value chain, a sequence, not the sequence, but the set of activities designed to be performed in order to convert the opportunity or the demand from the outside market into value co-creation ability, which is the purpose of a service, and ipso facto as a purpose of the organization. Now, those guiding principles, which are fairly new concept, there's 7 of them. They're called collaborate and promote visibility, keep it simple and practical, progress iteratively with feedback, think and work holistically, optimize and automate, start where you are and focus on value. And they are high level, pretty abstract set of rules which are applicable in every situation, in every reality you find yourself, and they should be a guiding light for your organization through difficult transformations and difficult challenges. The middle part of SVS, Service Value System, is named Service Value Chain, SVC, and this is this set of activities performed in any preferable or any dictated by a specific situation sequence to achieve value co-creation. You have engage here, focus on outside world. You have plan here, coordinating things that happen in your organization. You have improve here, which is an activity of improving our organizations. And you have a middle triad of design and transition, obtain and build, deliver and support. Obtain and build should be associated with creation of new things in our organization. A development effort is a part of obtain and build. Procurement effort is a part of obtain and build. Design and transition should be associated with coordination, the execution of the plan. Sometimes it's a project, sometimes it's a budget, but it is executed by design and transition. And deliver and support associates itself, with no surprise here, with maintenance, with maintaining the services, co-creating values for the individuals, teams, or enterprises. So this is the model of activities, but this is also extremely flexible. You can go through service value chain in multiple different ways. You have an example here which goes from actual outside demand through engage, design and transition, through plan, design and transition, obtain and build, and so on and so forth. But you have also different approaches. You can go through, and a customer support is an example here. You can go through a different path, different step from the value co-creation side through the entire cycle. So what it shows us is the agility, flexibility of new ITIL. Those of you who remember the previous concept from ITIL version 3, which was the service lifecycle, know that while it was extremely useful, while it was extremely graphical, while it was extremely organized, it was also one-directional. This one is not. That's why we are avoiding the sphere or the circle as a symbol at any cost, because the circle is associated with sequence, with repeatable and yet sequential approach. This is not. So this is extremely useful from the Agile perspective. Now, practices. This is something where a practitioner will find a lot of his good old friends, because a practice is a new concept which is not used instead of a process, but it is used as a better explanation of a process, one might say. So a practice is a set of organizational resources and perhaps capabilities which is designed for a specific purpose, for a specific topic. It used to be a role of a process, yes, but the process is a sequence of specific activities, and this is not something which is Agile friendly. You know it quite well from the office. You know it quite well from municipal, from public sector. You know it quite well from the heavily regulated organizations, that once you put process in place, it's so difficult to change it because it's a process. It very quickly becomes familiar, and it's difficult to modify it. I will talk more about it later down the line. So instead, we have a practice. A practice can utilize a process, but it can also be a flexible approach. So things like continual improvement, information security management, knowledge management, relationship management, or service financial management, strategy management, things you know from ITIL version 3, gain now the name of a practice, and you can still practice it as a process, but you also have this ability to make it much more agile friendly, much more flexible. Now, there are some new concepts which were previously not present here, like enterprise architecture, measurement and reporting, workforce and talent management. This is not to say that ITIL never addressed those, but it never addressed them at the level it addressed the things you have here in white or yellow. And this is something that changes. There are actually three areas of services we are considering. The one you've seen previously are something called general management practices. There are service management practices associated, as you see from the name, with services. And there are also technical practices, which are deployment, infrastructure and platform management, and software development and management. So a bit of fresh air in some old concepts, a bit of highlighting and re-accenting the concepts you knew from the past. So the practices contribute to activities are done on the inside, and SVS works this way perfectly. And this is how we do it. So setting aside specific activities, let's talk a bit about how you can obtain more detailed knowledge, because it's physically impossible for me to explain every concept in this small form of a webinar, but I don't have to. There are training sessions designed specifically to suit to your appetite, whatever questions you may have after this session. So what you see in front of you right now is, for all intents and purposes, a path through certification of ITIL4. It starts where you might expect it always starts, from ITIL Foundation, a 2-day course which explains all those concepts I mentioned and so much more in a applicable and understandable way, in much more extensive way than I'm doing right now. But later down the line, when you fell in love with ITIL and fell in love with ITIL, you shall. There are some intermediate training sessions, and there's actually 5 of them. They are called Create, Deliver, and Support, Drive Stakeholder Value, High Velocity IT, Direct, Plan, and Improve, and Digital and IT Strategy. They are divided into 2 pathways. If you want to become a professional in managing ITIL environment, you do 4 of them. If you want to become a strategic leader, perhaps a decision maker, a board or director level employee in your organization familiar with ITIL version 4, this is the path to look for. But the strategic leader, SL, and managing professional, MP, they both create an expert level of new ITIL. There's always ITIL master level achievable, but as you probably know, master level is not something you can achieve through certification. This is something you achieve by peer review, and this is a completely different story. Those of you who will reach for master, and this is what I definitely employ you to try, will know exactly what is the path here and how to achieve it. Now, this was the new certification, but ITIL4 does not exist in a bubble. This is something which is an evolution and continuation. So if you have qualifications from version 2 or version 3, you probably have some questions related to how you can forge them into something useful with version 4. This would not be advisable just to scratch the other versions and just ignore them and just ask you to start your path from the very beginning. It makes no sense. So this is some simplifications, some examples here showing you how should you proceed in case of different levels of your qualification. You have a guy here with ITIL2 qualifications. What should he do? Well, version 2 is still worth points in version 3. So depending on how many points you have, go through foundation in version 3, or go through managing across the life cycle in version 3, depending on whether you want to be a foundation level guy or you want to be an expert, and then proceed to version 4. This is good. This is still available, by the way, and this is very good. This will give you opportunity to understand the evolutionary aspect of ITIL. Now, this guy has a foundation in version 3, and he asks how to get to version 4. Obviously, he can start from the scratch with foundation version 4, but I would advise against it. There are still on the market available intermediate version 3 sessions, which will credit him with some points, 3 or 4 points, and he can achieve 17 points and then transition into managing professional expert level in version 4 immediately. This is extremely useful way of achieving it. This is how this is to an extent how I received my qualification version 4. I was an expert in version 3, and I actually, through managing professional transition, through the expert level, went into proficiency with version 4. So this is a continuation of the utilization of the points from the version 3 certification. This is still applicable. This is something you can still do, and I strongly implore you to do that. There are several examples here. Oh, this is actually my path. This is the nice case. Some guy who went my path from ITIL version 3 expert to the transition module into the expert in version 4. So this is something which is clearly open to you as well. So those new concepts are clearly explained, whether it is on managing professional transition or ITIL4 foundation, and I strongly implore you to try and go through them, because there's a lot of practical obstacles in front of typical ITIL version 3 organizations, and just knowing those concepts and just achieving this foundation-based ITIL4, the Agile ITIL, the flexible ITIL qualification is definitely helpful for you, and will help you on your way with the organization through what is to come. Now, I was suggesting on a regular basis with this presentation that there are some practical challenges ahead. So this is perhaps the good moment for me to highlight some of them in the section of our training, which is called From the Field, ITIL4 in the eyes of early adopters. Now, I'm definitely an early adopter, but by my trade and by my profession, I am a consultant in IT service management area. I am helping organizations to go through transformations. Sometimes it's from ITIL3 to ITIL4, but sometimes it's very specific, very practical, where ITIL3 or ITIL4 are but tools I'm using to help organizations to on their path to excellence. So there are specifically 3 challenges I had for many years with ITIL version 3, and I believe very strongly ITIL version 4 provides multiple answers to attack them. Break the chains of process. This is something I highlighted when we are talking about SVC, and this is something I really want to return to. Now, the process can be a chain. In fact, the chain is a metaphor commonly used to describe a process, a sequence of activities like the elements of the chain. Okay, fair enough. But once you take this chain and you put it in your place, it becomes less of a tool for you. It becomes more of, a chain, something which is locking you down. It becomes almost a religion. It becomes adherence to the process is more important than what process is supposed to bring to the table. I don't like it. I think it's short-sighted. I think it's overprotective. Now, if you ever encounter a situation in your organization or in any other organization you encounter as a consumer or as an employee or as a contributor, a situation where someone did something which failed to bring value to the customer, and then he says or she, or then they say, well, at least it was adherent to process. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Adherence to process should not be a value on its own. It should be only a value when process is actually valuable. So ITIL definitely breaks the chains of processes, allows us to understand their proper position in the organization as a tools of trade, as a helpful solution, but not as a slave master to some extent. Now, the highlight on improvement, the modern role of improvement in ITIL4 is something that helps me a lot right now, because it was sometimes difficult to explain to people how important it is to continually improve. People had this tendency, this mentality of, when it's done, let's not return to it. There's a lot of new things we need to tackle. No. If something is done, now the journey starts. Now improve it. It's not like the first iteration is I mean, it may be enough, it may be to certain satisfaction of your client, but there's an ocean of potential when you start to improve it. I mean, if you cook, you do not only rely on one recipe you learned 10 years ago, you try to improve. Now, if you add more spice, if you add more sugar, if you add something more, if you modify, change it a bit, those are all the things that brings more and more value, literally, to the table. So why not do that? Improvement is a must. It's not, it's working, so let's keep it this way. No, improve. We are in a very competitive environment these days. We are in necessity of constant movement. Improve is always a move in the right direction. So very often when I approach my clients, a lot of issues I'm facing are related to interaction between traditional process-oriented management and agile approach. A lot of companies, especially in IT, especially in creative IT, say, so we have those creative teams, we have those project teams, we have those developers who are working in Scrum, who are working with those new dynamic agile methods, and it simply doesn't fit our traditional structure. They have this brilliant idea and they want to do it today, and we cannot allow them to do that because, you know, our shareholder meeting is in 2 weeks' time. Our change advisory board meets in 3 days, so they have to wait. This has always been a challenge when you were going agile on transforming your organizations into those agile ways. Repeatability, the schedule, the mentality of predictability were always a very strong part of modern business. Now this has to some extent change. Now, but there was a problem. How to change it? What is our best practice for changing it, going agile? If ITIL version 3, which is our current framework, is suggesting for us to be sequential, is suggesting to us to be process-oriented. How can we do that? Well, with ITIL version 4, a flexible, fit for agile solution. Less of a process, less of once done, always done, more of a fit for situation, fit for moment. And this is what I absolutely love about this new solution. Though time is short, bear in mind that we are constantly, as a Mindstream, we constantly provide training sessions for ITIL Foundation. Now you may watch it and it's too late to sign up for our nearest session, which is on April 28th and 29th. But please contact us if you feel like ITIL4 is good for you. We will definitely be here with some more sessions should you crave it. There were several questions asked during our previous live session, which we are recording right now. There were questions. There were questions related, for example, to the usage of the credits from previous versions. And I think in this version we highlighted it a lot. You have this beautiful opportunity of going back several minutes. We explained specific ways you can take benefit from the credits from the previous versions to excel in version 4. There were some questions related to applicability of ITIL to different businesses. Now, bear in mind, ITIL is still an abbreviation of IT infrastructure libraries. So the origin story is to help people manage IT infrastructure. But through the ages, through the years of development, ITIL definitely soaked best practices from multiple different branches of business. It definitely extended its interest from pure infrastructure to entire IT. So it's applicable not only to infrastructural business, but also to development, also to maintenance. And it also is, for all intents and purposes, a set of best practices from general managerial markets. So if you're working with services which rely on IT but may not be in fact IT in nature or not associated with this market, you can still use ITIL to your benefit and to your major success. So you should also be interested in ITIL4 certification. There was one question which was for my vanity, I should imagine. Am I delivering training sessions on ITIL? And the answer is yes. I am a Mindstream contributor. If you are interested in training session with me, then the Mindstream is the way to go. It's just my vanity to repeat this question. But if you have any question outside of this of the scope of this short session, please do not hesitate to reach for us. We are here actually to answer those questions. We can do it in the form of a training, which is a preference for us, but we can also talk, we can also meet, we can also advise, and we can also help, especially a time of isolation, especially a time which we have right now of working from home, may be a perfect pretext to actually expand on your knowledge and actually chase and achieve this ideal of perfect ITIL. Competence and qualification. With that, I wish to thank you for your attention. I wish to thank you for your participation. I wish to thank you for following up on the concept. I hope to see you in the training room. If that is not going to be a possibility very soon, then I'm hoping to see you on some live calls and some virtual training environment. On behalf of Mindstream, your knowledge and development provider, on behalf of PeopleCert, on behalf of Axelos, my name is Szymon Urbanowicz, and it was a pleasure to deliver this to you. Thank you.